What is going on, everyone? Luca Rosano here, back with another video. Before we get into it, do me a solid favor, guys. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you aren't new. I realize there's a lot of people who watch my content who aren't subscribed. The stats show it, so it takes 2 seconds. If you aren't already, please do me a solid. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any videos or live streams. Moving forward, I'm going to be live streaming Raptors games that I find appealing. I mean, I'm going to be focusing on the bigger matchups. I know a lot of people reached out to me yesterday like, Luca, where were you? You didn't live stream the Raptors and Thunder game, which was pretty much a tank game at its finest. So moving forward, guys, I will be sticking to the bigger matchups on the Raptors slate. So I will be back live streaming tomorrow night when the Raptors take on the Warriors. I'll be doing the Lakers, the Clippers. So I just want to give you a little heads up. I'm not going to be doing every single Raptors game down the stretch for obvious reasons. I think this team is finally embracing the tank. So we'll see how that ends up being. Okay, what do I want to talk about in today's video, guys? Gary Trent Jr. The Toronto Raptors did it again. Now, I know a lot of you are still upset and angry that this team traded Norman Powell, but you guys got to understand something. The Raptors had no choice but to trade Norman Powell. Norman Powell is probably going to make upwards of $20 million per season. He is headed for a very big payout. The Raptors were not going to afford him or be able to afford him. Thus, he would have walked anyway in the offseason. So the Raptors at least traded him to get something in return. And I know a lot of people initially did not like this trade package, especially considering the fact that the Raptors had 15 trade offers for Norman Powell. But I'm going to tell you right now what I've been telling Raptors fans from the very start and the very moment they made the trade. Be patient with Gary Trent Jr. He is going to be an absolute stud. When I look at a guy like Gary Trent Jr., I see a younger version of Norman Powell with more upside. I see a guy who is a cheaper version of Norman Powell and somebody who can grow with this Raptors organization. And Masai Ujiri actually had high praise for Gary Trent Jr., saying that he saw Gary Trent Jr., the young 22-year-old, as a guy with a lot of upside, as a shooter, defender, and a player that fits well with the team's core of Van Vliet, Siakam, and OG Anunoby. And there's one thing I've learned to accept with Masai Ujiri. It's to trust him. You look at Masai Ujiri's track record, guys. He doesn't make any bad trades. Let's take a look at his track record right now. He traded Bargnani to the Knicks in 2013 for a lottery pick for Jakob Poeltl, used to get Kawhi Leonard later on. Traded Grievous Vasquez for Norman Powell in 2015. Traded Terrence Ross for Serge Ibaka at the 2017 NBA trade deadline. Traded DeRozan, Poeltl for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. And traded Jonas Valanciunas, DeLon Wright, and CJ Miles for Marc Gasol at the 2019 NBA trade deadline. And for those of you saying it's a bad trade, it was a bad trade because look where this team is at now, I beg to differ. If the Raptors do not trade for Marc Gasol, if Masai Ujiri does not make that move at that moment, the Raptors probably don't win the championship. I'm going to say bluntly. Marc Gasol was a huge part of the reason why the Raptors were able to have success against the Sixers, the Bucks, and obviously against the Warriors on their way to their first ever NBA championship. So trust Masai Ujiri. He's a mastermind when it comes to the game of basketball. Now let's get back to Gary Trent Jr. and why I'm so high on this guy. He's an above-average catch-and-shoot three-point shooter, and while he doesn't create offense particularly well, he can be a floor spacer for the Raptors moving forward. If anyone is going to get the most out of Gary Trent Jr. for the next couple of seasons, it's this Raptors team and this organization that prides themselves on turning hidden gems into something special. Now, Trent is just an average defender at best, so the Raptors are going to have to rely on his offense as they try to develop their newest prospect. But what we saw in that game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, guys, could be a sign of things to come for Gary Trent Jr. as a member of the Toronto Raptors. He scored a career-high 31 points against the Thunder in a game that I did watch, even though I did not live stream it, and I was very impressed to see what I saw from Gary Trent. Now, it was a rocky debut for Gary Trent Jr. He only scored 8 points on 4 for 11 shooting from the field. Then he scored 6 points on 2 for 10 shooting from the field in his second game, followed by 16 points on 6 for 15 shooting in his third game. But then against the Thunder, Gary Trent Jr. had himself a ball game. He had a team-high 20 points on 8 for 10 shooting from the field and 4 from 6 from three-point range at the half. Then he went on to score 11 points the rest of the way, bringing his total to 31 for the game. I don't want to steal catchphrases from Philadelphia, especially, But you got to trust the process here. Gary Trent Jr. isn't going to become the next big thing right before your very eyes. It's going to take time. He is still so raw, so young. And you got to think that there is a lot of upside to this guy. And maybe that upside and, that potential was covered a little bit in Portland because he was playing behind guys like CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard who demand a ton of shots and who score the ball at will. Let's be honest here. I mean, Portland wasn't going to put any of the offense through Gary Trent Jr. when you got guys like Dame and CJ McCollum on your team and Carmelo Anthony. So Gary Trent Jr. now has an opportunity to come to a Raptors team that could use some offense. So now, for the remainder of this season, in what seems to be a tank season from here on out, we can really see what Gary Trent Jr. can provide. And we can see the upside that Masai Ujiri is high on. Now, is he going to be the long-term solution at, the starter position? I don't think so. I still think the Raptors have to address, getting that guard. And I touched on this in a video yesterday. A guy like Bradley Beal would be awesome. But Gary Trent can be that guy who, maybe is a long-term staple from off the bench alongside a guy like Chris Boucher. Or maybe I'm proven wrong. Maybe Gary Trent Jr. takes his game to a whole new level, can become a more consistent shot creator, and he does find his place in the starting lineup for the years to come. So I have definitely been patient with Gary Trent Jr. I'm excited to see how he plays the rest of the way, and I think the Raptors do have something special here. And I think that in essence, we're going to be looking back at this trade a couple years from now, and we're going to be saying the Raptors did it again. Masai Ujiri and company did it again with Gary Trent Jr. So I know it was a bittersweet departure with Norman Powell. Listen, I haven't been the biggest Norman Powell supporter over the years. I've openly stated that. But this year, he has impressed me. He has shut me up. He has really elevated his game. But this game requires tough decisions at times. And the Raptors, there was no way they were going to be able to keep Powell. So they had to trade him. They had many options to choose from. And this is the route they chose. You get Gary Trent Jr. for your future. And you get a guy like Rodney Hood who he can provide some value as well. He's still only 28 years old. So don't sleep on that part of the deal as well. So that's just my take on this, guys. I do think, in hindsight, this is going to end up being a very good trade for the Raptors. And this is going to be one of those trades that works well for both teams. Portland gets what they need for right now. They're in win-now mode. They're trying to make a run. Norman Powell is going to provide a lot of good things for them. I did a video on, what Norman Powell brings to the Blazers a few days ago. Go check it out if you haven't already. And this is going to prove to be a good move for the Raptors. Not today, not tomorrow, but in a couple years' time from now. I honestly believe that. So, keep this as a receipt, and we'll see how this video ages. And we'll see what happens with Gary Trent Jr. and the Toronto Raptors. That's it for me, guys. Just wanted to do a quick video, quick take on this. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with this take? Do you disagree with this take? And what do you think of these new style videos where I do give you a take on some of the hottest news in the NBA? I'm going to be covering not only the Raptors now, but other NBA teams. So, let me know your thoughts on the style of video. Let me know your thoughts on today's video. Hit me up in the comment section down below. I love to read all your comments. Again, hit the like button, guys. Make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, and go and follow me on social media where we can keep the conversation rolling. That's on Instagram at Luca Rosano, Twitter at Luca Rosano3, and TikTok, Luca.Rosano. That's it for me, guys. I will be going live tomorrow when the Raptors take on the Warriors, and I will catch you all again then. So until next time, be great and stay blessed. Peace out.